Thank you for attending this breakout session. This session is filled with powerful information to help improve your health and empower you. Radio Free 102.3 KJLH. We are you.
Well, hello, and thanks for joining us. This is Lori Gay. I'm the president and CEO of Neighborhood Housing Services of LA County, and I'm here to moderate and have a real fireside chat with some friends of ours on financial health. What's your story? And making the best in tough times, just figuring it out. And so I've invited some experts to join me and to tell their stories, to talk about legacy, to talk about products and programs they've got available, and to really encourage you as a part of this Women's Health Expo. Thank you, KJLH, that you can do it. Don't despair, don't lose heart. This is the time for all of us to lean in and really help each other. So let me welcome to our little chat the crazy ladies that are experts in their fields. Lisa Brooks from California Bank and Trust, Zita Danielle from Rebuilding Together of the City of Angels, and Constance Anderson from the Center, which is a part of Lendistry. And they're going to kind of self-introduce and tell you what they want to talk about and their stories and what's going on. And please, ladies, let's overtalk each other so we really represent our crew. But I'll start with Constance and just tell them who you are and some of what you're doing, Constance.
Thanks, Lori. Constance Anderson. I'm the president of the Center by Lendistry. The Center by Lendistry is looked at as the nonprofit arm of Lendistry, basically meaning that we provide education and technical assistance and financing and all kinds of things that support small business. One of the other things that we like to think of us as meeting the business owner where they are. And we do that by creating an on-demand platform for small businesses that allow them to reach and participate in our training at the most convenient time for them. And there's other things. Lori, is that enough? Or
That's a great start.
Okay.
Thank you, Constance, for being
You're welcome.
Here. Okay, Zita, take us further.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Lori. It is a pleasure to be here with these incredible women. I am the executive director of Rebuilding Together City of the Angels, and we are a new affiliate that's part of the National Rebuilding Together Network. And our focus is on serving seniors and disabled populations. Our goal is simple. We want people to stay in their homes for as long as they choose to stay in their homes. We want them to be safe in their homes, and we want them to be a part of their neighborhood. And we want the neighborhood to know who the seniors are and be there to support them.
Love it. Love it. Thank you, Zita. Okay, Lisa Brooks.
Good afternoon. My name is Lisa Brooks, and I'm the Community Reinvestment Liaison for California Bank and Trust. And what I do at the bank is that I focus on services and products that are specialized to low and moderate income communities. And part of that is making sure that all communities that the bank serves knows about our products and services. And through that, it's really forced through the Community Reinvestment Act of 1977. And all banks have a community reinvestment officer and a community development department. And it's incumbent upon the public to reach out and find out what the banks have to offer and just how they can serve the communities. So I want to impart a little bit about that today.
Love it. And I'm Lori with Neighborhood Housing Services, and we're known as the region's largest affordable homeownership provider. And so getting on the path to homeownership matters, and you may decide it's not for you, but if you're renting and you want to manage your money better, you want to make sure your home is safe and sound, you want to think about the possibility of homeownership in the future, whatever all those thoughts are, we're here to serve you. And a lot of our services are provided for free as a local nonprofit. And so we say, get in here and get started, and we're here to help and get you moving on your journey. So as we think about money, ladies, and trying to make sure that our financial health is well, Who wants to start off talking about that from your perspective, and maybe share a personal story so they kind of know, some of what your journey has been?
Hmm. Well, let me kind of, I'm happy to start. Let me just say that financial fitness and financial stability is important. And it's important, especially for those that are fortunate enough in Los Angeles to own a home. There's nothing that feels worse than to lose your home or to live in a home that basically is not healthy for you, or to lose your home because you haven't properly prepared. One of the things that I can tell you, and Lori, you know this because you and I have worked and talked about how do we develop a program that allows us to help seniors to age in place and to stay in their homes. And one of the things that I realized when I took the job with Rebuilding Together and started the affiliate here in Los Angeles is how unprepared most individuals were to retire and what that was going to really look like for them. I haven't met a single person yet that has said that they don't want to live in their home any longer. It's just quite the opposite. They all want to stay in their homes. But in preparing, they haven't done, which is the work that you do so well, which is that financial education, understanding what retirement looks like, preparing for deferred maintenance on their home long term, preparing for the need, if it occurs, that they can no longer live or to stay by themselves. Before this call, we were talked about, what it is we are doing and how it's a labor of love for us. Well, part of that labor of love is to recognize what we do well and to partner together to make sure that there's a solution. And part of that solution for me is that as we go out there and rehab homes, we're recognizing that these families need to go back and they need comprehensive budgeting. And that comprehensive budgeting isn't what we do. That's what an LA NHS does. That's what Lendistry does with small business owners. And that's what California Bank and Trust does. That's what's important. I will tell a story of, I had a woman and a wonderful woman, called me saying, Zita, I need your help. 87 years old, has lived in her home 40 years. She owned her own business all of her life. Her only child is no longer with her. She did not have that family support system to care for her. She had planned very well in her mind. She'd done everything right, will, trust, and I hope we're going to talk about the importance of those things to protect your asset as part of financial education. But one of the things that she did not and could not prepare for is what would be the realistic cost to live in her home and have it really be her forever home. So in her fear, right now, her fear is that her house at some point will no longer be safe for her because she's concerned about the roof caving in. There was no plan for the replacement of a roof in her planning, as well as it was. There is no plan in her plan for what it looks like if she needs in-home supportive care and she does not have long-term care insurance. She may possibly or may not be eligible for in-home care support, which, as wonderful it is, isn't going to fill the cap if she needs 24-hour care. So part of my work with this woman is not only to look at how we can make the improvements that in her home that will keep her safe, but it's also to connect her to partners like you in the community that can help her to figure out those things. I think that one of the things that's important for Rebuilding Together City of the Angels is to do what we do well and find great partners that will help us to make it better.
That's phenomenal, Zita. And real stories, right, of people. And certainly Black families, where the numbers are estimated that over 70% of Black families don't have a will or living trust, and their estates are not in order. And when they pass on, it goes to probate or something else, depending on what state they live in, because they haven't done the proper documentation. People don't like to talk about death or long-term planning. They want to live in the moment and feel good. And guess what? Don't own real estate then. Because you need to think about it, and you need to process more than sitting up eating and talking and laughing. So thank you for that, Zita. Lisa,
Well,
tell us
Lori,
some of what you're thinking.
yeah, I'm thinking about, people in long-term planning and looking at small businesses, during the George Floyd
Floyd,
this murder last year, and all of the inequities that were discovered and really brought to the forefront. One of the things that we found is that, as you mentioned, Blacks are really underrepresented, and especially in the area of access to capital. And there are just things that we need to do in order to prepare ourselves for capital. And with a traditional banking company or bank, such as California Bank and Trust or any bank, we don't want to be viewed as just a transaction, someone that comes in and maybe just cashes their paycheck and leaves, or someone that doesn't really have a relationship. So what I really wanted to bring home to our women business owners is that, really make a relationship with a bank. Go in and ask to speak to the relationship banker. The titles are different in every banking institution, but it could be relationship banker, financial analyst, a business banker, a relationship manager. These people will sit down with you and they will go over your tax returns with you, figure out how to best position you for a loan, and just really help you. And and you may not even need money at this point, but what that does, it builds a relationship. It builds your character with a lending institution, a traditional lending institution. And one of the things that we have at California Bank and Trust that's coming on the 17th of May is that we're starting with a diversity lending program for businesses, which will be tailored to people of color, Black, Hispanic, Asian, Native Americans, women, and veterans that were, any veteran that was discharged without a dishonorable discharge. And we're trying to make credit available so that we're looking at a different type of credit policy to funnel people in that fall under the criteria that may not go through our traditional line of our credit policy. So it's just another way for people to access credit, access a loan. And if in the event that it just can't be done, we will happily work with a company like Lendistry to help people really get on their feet and understand a lot about the background and what it takes to actually have a small business loan. Education is key.
Well, and knowing what you're potentially borrowing, right? And that type of education, I don't know why we think we can somehow be ashamed that we need to know more about what we're getting to and ready to invest in. And the shame would be that you borrow and don't quite understand what you're doing, right?
Exactly.
Right.
Or
so that's where
or borrow too much.
Yeah, right. Borrow what you need, right? And that's some where Constance comes in with her team for sure at the center. So Constance.
Thank you, Lori. I heard a lot. I heard some things that Zita said that I wanted to comment on. I heard some things that Lisa said that I wanted to sort of just make sure that our listeners are engaging everything that we're bringing to them. This is an opportunity for us to share information. I look at this as a collaborative effort. And I think it was Lisa mentioned the educational piece. So the Center by Lendistry has a very strong educational piece. And that piece would help you to understand how much money you need to borrow from a CB&T. A lot of the organizations that are out there, the financial institutions that are out there, are partnering with us. They're looking for us to help them to make their clients better clients. So if you use our educational program, we're going to help you to understand how much money you need and how you're going to go about paying it back. Because that's what Lisa wants to know. How are you going to pay it back? And so we will help you to get to that point. You may think you need $100,000, and when we add it all up and we look at it, maybe you do, but you only qualify for 50. And a banker typically is not going to review your business plan, look at your projections, look at your margin streams and so forth. But we can do that for you to help you to understand why you only qualify for $50,000. So that's one thing. The other piece, I think it was Zita that mentioned it, legacy and being able to stay in your home or for legacy for me, I look at it as a person of color that owns a business that does not have a legacy plan, okay, which usually affects their home as well. So I'm looking at it, and Lori asked us to share stories. So I was in my doctor's office about 4 months ago, and I met a man that was African American. He had on a uniform that told me he was a plumber or something. And I said, "Are you a business owner?" If most people know me, I engage pretty much anyone and will start a conversation with you. He said, "I own the company." And I said, "Oh my goodness, that is so good." And he said, "I've owned it for 40 years. And I said, "Do you have, some certifications?" He said, "Oh yeah, I'm electrically certified to do this. I got a contract with this organization and this." And I said, "Well, what are your plans when you're going to retire?" Now, I stepped out of my lane when I said that, because obviously I decided he was old enough to start thinking about retiring. He did not have a problem with that. He didn't have a problem with it, but he did say, "Well, I'd probably sell it." And I said, "Well, what about your children? How old are they?" And he told me that. And I'm like, "You're not going to leave your business to your kids?" He said, everyone listen to me. He said, "They can do better."
Uh-oh.
I'm like, better than what?
Right.
You have put your kids through these Ivy League schools, which he did name. One was Yale. I forgot the other one. One's an attorney and so forth. I said, "But your business isn't good enough for your kids?" I wanted to kind of hug him or something and help him to understand that's not the thought process that you should have. Your kids don't have to crawl under the house anymore. They can hire people to do that. That's probably how he got started. But the understanding is they're younger. They can do things differently. They think differently than we do. Allow them that opportunity. Don't just automatically exclude them. The other thing I wanted to mention is, for me, I learned at a late age that I needed to save more and spend less. And the idea is, had I done that much sooner than I did, I would have more money in my retirement plan. I'd have better long-term care, Zita. So what I want to say to the young people out there is, I'm interested in doing some type of a youth entrepreneurial program, an extensive youth entrepreneurial program. And at the same time, taking them through a financial literacy program. Lisa, that was for you. In doing that, we would help to create better small businesses at a younger age. We're going to take them through financial literacy. We're going to take them through the business plan projections and so forth and so on. And they're just going to be better people, and they're going to save more. Lori, you remember that youth program that we did at the Center for Sustainable Communities? It was so overwhelmingly, I was grateful to even have an opportunity to bring it, but I talk too much. Okay. That's it for me.
Well, you kind of led into where, oh, go ahead, Lisa.
I'd like to piggyback on what you're saying about for young adults and young people, because as my personal story is that I have two adult children. One's 29 and the other one is about to be 32. And since they were in high school, I have stressed to them the importance of credit, of good credit, because I really feel that good credit is the foundation to owning a business, to buying a home, to credit cards, whatever you want to do financially, your credit is going to be your backbone. So I have put them to the task time after time to make sure they pay their credit card bills on time. And neither of them are homeowners, but they have both gone through Lori's homeownership class. So they are very well prepared in order when it's time for them to buy a home. And I've taught them about savings, and they've really learned a lot about budgeting from Lori's classes as well. So I just wanted to throw that in because it's credit is the beginning of everything.
Agreed. Absolutely.
Wow. And I appreciated you were kind of teeing up for me there, Constance, the tips I wanted to leave with people around housing, no matter whether you're renting or owning, credit, savings, and income. Those are the big three. And once you're an owner, then it's about equity, right? And maintenance and all kinds of other things to keep that property safe and habitable and available for other things you may want to do in life. But though once you get down managing to your credit, like Lisa just mentioned, and then saving something, if you want to be a homeowner, most of the American public doesn't even save 10% of their earnings. And so that's shameful. We're living off of our money instead of letting it leverage for us. And I think what happens is people are more focused on building assets around things they consider assets around how they look, what they drive, what bling they have to show for themselves. Can they have a good time versus building your portfolio? What's of real value in what you own and manage? And if real estate isn't a part of your portfolio, then you should have investments, securities, and other kinds of what are considered real assets that you can put a value to that can be liquidated at some point if you need it. It should be insured. And when you can't say that other than car insurance, you're missing something. Mm-hmm. And we're going to deduct your car payment from your capacity to pay on a home every month. It's not an addition, it's a subtraction. And so I think people don't realize that and they hurt themselves. Many people have gotten stuck because of their college tuition and their bills relative to graduating with a degree. And then they can't find a job that helps them pay at any significant level that debt off. And so in housing, many lenders will value or they'll look at that and say, well, 1% of whatever your outstanding balance is what we think you're going to pay every month. And so we have to deduct that from your capacity to now buy a home. Well, 1% is nothing. So think through before you go to school. Who are you trying to become? Do you know? And is college the way to get there? Or do you need to go to a trade school or a junior college? Do you need to be entrepreneurial and say, I don't need any of that. I'm willing to use my witty idea to change the marketplace in a way that's phenomenal. I have a niece, my story, who is an artist. Both her parents are artisans of sorts in architecture, interior design. You know, they like to create stuff. So she was going to be that person. As she looked to think about a master's degree and staying in school, I said to her, why? You've already got an artisan portfolio that is global. You're selling stuff in Colombia and Venice, Italy. You're all over the world with your statement. How much money do you really need to make, or do you want your art out there? What will a secondary degree do for you? What the undergraduate degree did was give her exposure to a network of people. So it was worth it for her. But she was designing in high school, clothes and art. And so I said to her, don't overrate school, don't underrate it. But what you have to understand is what it does for you. I said, then don't run up a bill. Use as many scholarships as you can so that when you choose to build your artisan portfolio and add real estate, stocks, bonds, whatever you're going to do, you're always adding and multiplying, not subtracting and dividing. And so I watch her life now, fast forward 4 to 5 years, and she's building out that portfolio even more. So we all have a story, right? And the income piece is you should always be trying to grow your income the best you can with what you have available as your personal assets. But you have to plan the work the plan, or you're going to fail miserably. And so without a plan, you fail. What's your plan? What are you going to activate? Who do you want to be in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years? If you don't know, get into class and get some more information. And so we invite people, even with housing, to learn as much as you possibly can. And don't spend just to be spending. You need to live in a safe and affordable space. And however you can work with some of us to help you do that, you want to do it. And so those are some of my tips. And I think I don't want us to close out our time. We've still got some good time here to talk about legacy from the way you see it. Constance, what does that look like to you?
Wow. For me, it's a little difficult to even talk about legacy. So I'm going to be totally honest with everyone. I was adopted. I really don't have the family connection. Don't anyone get emotional because I got my head around this, okay? I am basically out here on my own. I know that for me, it means I'd better be able to have long-term care if I need it, because there's no sister, there's no brother, there's no husband, and I probably shouldn't have said that, to take care of me when I can't take care of myself. So the idea is legacy for me means I need to be prepared, as Zita talked about earlier, to make sure I have long-term care, that I have the right insurance. If by chance I end up living in a home, that there is sufficient support to make sure that I can replace the roof, should the roof need replacing, or replace the plumbing or the electrical or whatever. So for me, it's being able to take care of me, making sure that my legacy plan is in place, which means it's financially set up and designed to take care of me. Because that's it. I might have missed a couple of things, but you know, I tell people all the time, it's not always about you. So my job every day allows me to give back. So when I start to think about legacy, for me, it's me being prepared to have what needs to be in place to make sure I'm not homeless.
That's huge. Because you don't have what most people might call the same kind of family support network, Constance, knowing what you've got to do for you does matter. And it makes you then more available to all the phenomenal people that you want to help for as long as possible. And then if things change or you decide you're changing them in your life, you can do that. You may decide you want to kind of quote fake retire, because I know you probably never really will be retired, and travel for 6 months of the year, or live in a different part of the world for 6 months of the year. You should have that option if it's something that's in your dream, right?
Absolutely.
And you won't get there though if you don't put some of those things in place that you were talking about. Which, oh, Zita, this is the best football being thrown to you ever.
Yeah, well, you know, and I tell you, I was going to ask if I could jump in because I think
please.
about the subject here, which is women's health.
That's right.
And I will tell you, if you want to talk about what will kill you faster than anything, is financial stress will kill you quickly. I don't care whether you're 18, 21, 61, 81, or 101.
Yes.
We all need to develop a plan that focuses greater emphasis on saving and prepare for for however we choose to define our life and whatever we choose our lifestyle to be. Because otherwise, when you cannot afford to pay to fix that water heater, and I'll keep it basic, you can't afford $1,000 to fix the water heater. You can't afford to replace your tires. You can't afford to be properly insured. And these are all things that all of us face, regardless of age. There has to be development of plan. You've got to figure out where to park your money. I love what Lisa said about you want to know more. You want to have more than a I'm coming in to deposit my check relationship with your bank. You want to, because you also need to make certain that whether it's $10 a month, and I tell people all the time, it's not how you start this process. It's that you began and continue to be a part of that process. Think about how many people that Constance is helping that are sitting at home right now today or participating in this forum that are thinking about and have a desire to own a business of their own. Half of them, if they own a home, they are looking at opportunities to leverage the equity in their home to realize that dream. Is or is that not the right thing to do? That's why you need to be with someone like a center. That's why the level and how you develop your relationship with your financial institution is important. But for me, in the big scheme of this, there's got to be a plan for saving. You've got to figure those things out. And you've got to make sure that those funds are not negotiable with regards to unnecessary spending. What do I mean by that? I mean that every day you ought to be able to look and see that you've got some savings to prepare for whatever it is means most to you. But it's got to be to make sure that you are stable. And how do you define stable? You know, I tell them all the time, Lori, that's not for me to say, but I can tell you, I define stable as I can go to sleep tonight knowing my bills are paid. I can go to sleep knowing that if I need to make a repair or something that I can. It does not diminish any dream that we may have, but I will tell you, it's a travesty and I'll put this back to some of the young women out there. Many of us, they are out there most likely going to be faced with the need to care for a loved one, whether that's someone, and how you define love, I leave that to you. But the chances are someone is going to come to you and say, I need your help. One of the things that I see, or we see oftentimes with the participants and the families that we serve at Rebuilding Together, are situations where they're isolated from their children and other loved ones. And we ask them, well, why are they not connected to you when you really desperately need them? And oftentimes it's not that that person doesn't love them. It's just like them, no one has the capacity to step in and help. Because if you are working full time, and I'll just say it, your mom suddenly develops an illness that requires you to figure out how to make sure that they are properly cared for. For many, and I see it all the time, it's easier just not to pick up the phone. It's almost better to look to act as though they never called at all. And there's kind of a guilt, and there's there's a feeling of desperation and sadness when you cannot help someone because there wasn't any planning by anyone. So for all the women out there and their families and whomever they're nurturing and loving, I will say, have conversations about the wealth building, what preservation means to you. Not everyone is going to want to own a home. If you're going to buy a home, what is your long-term plan? Is it to own a home and then eventually sell? Look at moving to something smaller to be able to leverage those assets. Those are the things. That's why this conversation is important. How do you do that? if you have this dream, which I am a big proponent of dreams, dream big, dream hard, but have a plan for that dream. So if you're going to come to the center and you're going to talk to them about creating this small business that you've always had in the back of your mind is how you want to, that's going to be your career. That's the way, you know, my niece tells me all the time, Auntie, my job ain't your job. What you did throughout your career is not the career that I want for myself. Many young people now want to be self-employed. They want to be entrepreneurs. But how do you do that? And more importantly, as you reach a certain age, right now when you're young, it feels, you know, nothing can harm you. You are Teflon. Well, you're not Teflon.
Right.
And I think the more that we can have these conversations with ourselves, with our bankers, with small business programs that can help us to build out what we want to do, to make sure that if we want to be Teflon, that we can be Teflon, it's important. And that's what sustainability and preservation is about. Whatever it is that's important to you, make sure that you can sustain it for as long as you can sustain it. And talk to these women, talk to Lisa, talk to Constance, talk to Lori and her team about what that means. And I will say the basic of that starts with retention of wealth.
It does.
Attention.
It really does. Thank you, Zeta. She covered a lot.
Yeah.
Lisa,
Well,
tell
you
me
know,
some thoughts you're
my
having about.
really are around, you know, meeting with an attorney who specializes in trusts and estates. Personally, that's what I've done. And it's giving me peace of mind because when I think about legacy, I think about my two children. They will be my legacy. And in that, I want to prepare them for what they need to do in order to maintain our generational wealth so that their children can experience that as well. My whole thing is, and I've done this and I shouldn't have done this, but never sell if you don't have to in the state of California. Keep home. My grandparents bought a little bungalow, 2-bedroom, 1-bath home in Berkeley, California, in an area that was quasi-industrial, that was near the freeway. And this was back in the late 40s. And this was one of the only places in Berkeley that people of color could purchase. Now, they bought that house, I want to say, for $10,000 back, $10,000 or $12,000 back then. Right now, that house is over $1 million because there's been a Whole Foods that's moved in. There's been a retail area that has moved in. You just never know what's going to happen in the planning around a home. You just don't know what the city is going to do. You never know what development's going to come up to raise your property value. If you can just hang on to it, all I can say is just do your best to hang on to it. My other thing is for entrepreneurs, you know, on your tax returns and about saving money, a lot of times entrepreneurs will show that they had a net income of over $250,000 that were their revenues. But what is your net? What did you actually bring home? And that's what the lenders are really looking at. So in order to maintain, so you have your tax returns and that's what they're going to use, and you have your projections. So when you go into access capital or any type of credit, they're going to need to see that and need to see that you made money during the year and that not everything was depreciated or expensed off. Those are just a couple of things that I just wanted to impart, Lori. My whole thing is savings and passing your wealth on to the next generation and really putting the focus in them that they need to do that with their children as it goes on. Because as you know, we're only here for a certain amount of time.
Well, and Lori, if I could, because Lisa, you said something that I feel strongly about, and that is about wills and trust. And I think that as we sit down and begin to have these conversations, and I don't know whether it was, Constance or Lori talked about, that overcoming that fear, that somehow having a will or a trust is that premonition that something bad is going to happen to you. I will say that it's not. And I will say, you talked about owning that home in California. And here's what I will say about the importance of protecting those assets is that you got to have those conversations with the people closest to you. Because if you don't tell them what your plans are and what that plan is, and if it is not, for example, memorialized in some way that is considered to be legally acceptable, you're going to lose whatever that home is anyway. I will tell you that home you talked about, Lisa, that your grandparents, I believe you said, owned and were able to buy in Berkeley. Imagine if it wasn't protected. Well, the way things work here in California and across this country is that you might as well write off 35% of that value when you get ready to go to probate.
Sure.
Because that's where you're going. That's where you're going without a will or a trust. That's where you're going also, even if you've had a will or a trust and there's still some need for probate, if you haven't prepared your family to say, this is what you're going to need to get to the finances that are going to need it to get through probate, and how I would hope my family would preserve that wealth. We cannot talk about preservation of wealth and keep it to ourselves.
That's right.
We've got to have that conversation with our family. I'll put it like this: if you don't want your kids or your family fighting over whatever you built up, have the conversation. Have it with an attorney, but have it with them. Doesn't mean that they may have different ideas, may not even like it, but it's yours to pass on. So be smart about how you pass it on and figure out, for example, what is your home? How do you make your home support you? I love, Constance, what you said. You've got to look at how to make sure that you have the life until it's no longer yours that you feel good about. And what are those things that you need to do in order to plan? Wills, trusts, savings, minimizing debt. All of these things are critical to the conversation. The first thing we've got to do is to figure out, who do you go have those conversations with? And I want to say, go to the center, go to LANHS, go to California Bank and Trust and say, I want to talk to my customer service rep, my CSM or CRSM, and say, here's what I'm thinking. Are you the right person for me to be having that conversation with? And chances are they're going to be happy to start you on the right path.
For sure.
They are, and it's in their business plan to do that, right? And so I want to encourage us to think about some final thoughts for our listeners that around financial health and just this legacy piece we've been talking about. And as women, how important it is, right? And what I'll offer is that NHS has been hosting the Legacy Project, and we reinitiated it again during the pandemic, and we'll continue to offer more and more workshops, and then beyond training, financial resources as we have them to help people move into legacy thinking, talking, and doing. And so I want to encourage you about that. That's not just housing, it's business, it's having the right life insurance. Please let me quote you the data. In Los Angeles, the Federal Reserve did the Color of Money report in 2016 that reflected that 1% net worth was what Blacks had as compared to whites in our city. Across the country, we talk about median income and all these other terms, and sometimes that reaches 10% value of what white Americans may have. We don't need to be mad about that. We need to change the narrative. If we're wrong on the data count that we all do, and Black people really do have, 70% of the wealth of all the other racial groups that exist, why are we still beneath and not on top of that situation? Why is it that we're okay? And we cannot continue to blame other people. There's systemic racism and a bunch of atrocities, no doubt. But what is it that you can change to make sure that your family accumulates wealth, builds legacy, and then retains it in a way that shares for future generations? You have to do the work. And I've found that a lot of people don't want to. They don't want to be bothered with it. Okay, then just do your bling and be happy with that very cheap, silly approach to thinking and living, and be mad at me because I don't care. What you need to do is to be able to figure out what's important and then do the work around it. Come join us. We're welcoming you in to do the work you need to be able to get ahead. Some other final thoughts, certainly besides mine. Constance, I'm looking your way.
This is about women's health. There is a phrase, and I'm horrible at this, so somebody will know what I'm talking about. It's bring someone along with you. So for every woman out there that's running a business that is successful, seek out another woman that you could possibly mentor or help. So I'm just saying it takes a village. And that's something I think the first time I heard that phrase, it was Hillary Clinton in a book that she was writing or something. And it's just always stuck with me. It does take a village. You have a village right here talking to you right now. And we're trying to make sure that you're building equity, you're building a business that's sustainable, but we also need to think about what can we do as an individual to help another person that might be struggling in a way that maybe we struggled and we learned from. On that note, I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Constance. Zita?
Well, here's what I will say. I will say that just figure out what sustainable life looks like and start building out the tools. Don't be afraid to look at your budget and say, oh God, this is terrible. I can't do anything. Because that's part of the conversation to say, here's what you can do. And you can fix anything that's bad. I just believe that. I believe that you can turn anything you choose to around. And if it's about sustaining wealth, building a career, start by looking at what you can save and how you do it, whether it's $1 a day, $10 a day. I can tell you, I tell people kind of simple numbers. If you save $300, in 10 years, you're going to have $3,000, or actually you're going to have $326.97 in total. You multiply that, and then you figure out how do you get to $1,000. You then convert that to an investable feature. Suddenly you look up and what you thought was nothing, it's not enough. I'm not saving enough. Let me just go spend it on food that I don't need. But if you look back, you'll suddenly find yourselves in an incredible position to say, I did this, I saved this. And it'll be amazing how quickly you can build from there. So for all the women that are out there, for anyone that's telling you that you can't do something, and I will say this, I don't care where you're working right now. You have the ability to save. You have the ability to change your life. And if your life is living through your children, figure out how to do it for them and go talk to these incredible businesses that are here today about what that means to you and what it ought to look like. And don't let anyone tell you what you can't do if you're willing to put in the hard work to do it.
Love that, Zita. Hard work. and that you can, right? You
Yes.
can achieve what you're dreaming about. Lisa, some other final thoughts?
My final thoughts are around personal care. And as
Love
women,
it.
I know for myself during this pandemic, I really looked at myself and in a number of different terms in the area of my health, my spirit, my mindset, my meditation practices. You've got to get you together before you can help anybody else. And so my thing is taking care of who you are and having a dream and working towards that dream. Eat well, exercise, see your doctor, and save your money and work on your credit. That's it for me. I'm out. Thank you. It was a pleasure, Lori.
Oh, this has been a pleasure. And we want to thank these great ladies, Constance Anderson, Zita Danielle, and Lisa Brooks for joining me. I'm Lori Gay, and making ourselves available to talk to you about financial health and wellness and taking care of yourself. And like Lisa said, and manage your credit, manage your savings, manage to your income. And I'll just tell you that the power never concedes without a demand. It never has, and it never will. Frederick Douglass said that, and it rings true today like it did hundreds of years ago when he said it. We can do better together, but you have to want to do that. And we're here to inspire you about your wants, your needs, and your dreams. Let's be well in these tough times. Let's take the opportunity to stand together so that we achieve more. Have a great day, and we thank you for the opportunity to serve you.
The Radio Free 102.3 KJLH 21st Annual Women's Health Expo, brought to you virtually by the City of Long Beach and Fresno County Black Infant Health Program.